How's everybody doing? Good. My name's Kyle Learman. I work in the Office of Public Engagement here at the White House and run the Champions of Change program. So first, I just want to say a big congratulations to the champions. Round of applause for these guys. And we have a couple really special guests here today, so I'm actually going to quickly just go ahead and turn it over to Asim Mishra, who is the Acting Chief of Staff at the Corporation for National and Community Service.
So welcome everyone to the White House. This is very exciting for us, and congratulations to the Champions of Change. This is a really exciting event. This is an important event for us. So, you know, I myself, do people know what the Corporation for National Community Service is? Some heads nodding yes, some heads, some yays, some I don't know what you're talking about. We are, I don't have stock in the corporation, it's not a private sector company. The Corporation for National Community Service is a federal agency that runs programs like AmeriCorps. Have you heard of AmeriCorps? And Senior Corps, right? So it's all about national service and engaging people in the everyday problems of communities. And so I myself was in Public Allies. Has anyone heard of Public Allies before? Yes? Sure. Yes? Okay. So a young woman named Michelle Obama started Public Allies Chicago, and I happened to be a part of that program. And one thing I learned early on in my years in Chicago was that problems do not exist in a silo, right? And we all know that. But I was a young one, so I thought you attack health with health solutions, education with education solutions, but we know that everything is connected. And that because problems don't exist in a silo, solutions do not exist in a silo, right? And so it takes a coming together of minds, coming together of talents of the heart, the spirit, the hands, and the heart to meet the biggest challenges of our nation. So it requires collaboration. We call it collaboration every day, but I wanted to call it something different today. So it takes everyday citizens like you, the champions of change, who step up to be part of the solution. It takes strong communities and partners at all levels, local, state, and national. It requires the support of every sector, public, private, nonprofit. And that is what the National Forum for Youth Violence Prevention is all about. And the Corporation for National Community Service is a strong supporter of that and is proud to be part of it. When it comes to preventing youth violence, we all know in this room what it takes to make it work. We know that caring adults, caring peers, we know that solid pathways to education and employment are the solution and can change a young person's life. So in essence, we have the blueprint, right? We have the solutions roadmap. What we don't always have is the time, the support, and the resources we need to get this job done. And that is where national service members and our assets at the Corporation for National Community Service can help. For nearly 50 years, everyday Americans have served in AmeriCorps Vista. Has anyone heard of AmeriCorps Vista before? VISTA stands for Volunteers in Service to America. And they have been at the forefront of the fight against poverty, like I said, for 50 years now. From helping to develop some of the first Head Start programs and Job Corps sites in the mid-1960s, to serving at more than 1,000 projects nationwide every day. Our VISTAs commit a full-time for a year to develop new programs, raise funds, help manage projects, and build the capacity of communities to break the cycle of poverty. And so we know that violence is connected to poverty as well. And so when I say poverty, it's a very global look at poverty. In Detroit, through a partnership with the Points of Light Institute Hands-On Network, a VISTA member has been supporting the city's comprehensive strategy to curb youth violence. And I see some Detroiters here today, so thanks for making it out. And this strategy has made Detroit a national leader in the field. And we want to scale that. So today, we are proud to announce that we're expanding this promising partnership to other cities in the National Forum on Youth Violence Prevention. Boston, Chicago, Memphis, Tennessee, Salinas, San Jose, California will all be able to sponsor up to 2 VISTAs for each city beginning late the summer, specifically dedicated to cities' efforts around preventing youth violence, mobilizing aging volunteers, developing partnerships, and building public awareness around this issue. And when I say 2 vistas, the number might seem small to you, but when you hear 2 vistas, for us in the industry, vistas are capacity builders. 2 can mean 200 people, right? So 2 vistas is a lot. This means that more cities will have more resources to do this important work. And to end, I'd like to acknowledge some folks that are in the room that have been an integral part of making this partnership a success. Sarah Haas. Sarah, could you stand up, please? Sarah is Senior Manager of AmeriCorps Vista Programs at Points of Light. Bridget Altenberg. Bridget, could you please stand, please? Bridget is Executive Director of Chicago Cares, and then Mark Dean. Mark, we rode up the elevator together. Mark is Executive Director of Volunteer Mid-South. And I'd also like to include Clay Middleton, who is our Director of Faith-Based in, where is Clay? There you are. All these folks saw a good idea that was working somewhere and said, you know what, we can do something else here too. We can do something for other cities as well. And so thanks to all of you. And thanks to all of you here, because without your assets, your talents of the hearts, mind, and spirit, we would not be able to do this and get this done. So my last statement is this: we can do this. We can make it happen. And we at the Corporation for National and Community Service are honored to be a part of your solutions roadmap. So thank you so much. I'd like to bring on to the podium Tony West, Acting Associate Attorney General. He's a superstar at DOJ and a strong supporter of improving communities through violence prevention.
Thank you, and thank you, Asim, for that introduction. I'm not going to talk too long because the floor is hard and these people are standing. Thank you all very much for being here. I want to thank Kyle and the staff of the White House Office of Public Engagement for shining a light on this issue, which I think is so fundamental to the health of our nation. You know, youth violence is a tough issue. It's a difficult issue. It's one that a lot of people would rather not address, but I think it makes it all the more important for us to shine a light on it and talk about it and talk about possible solutions. Thanks also to Gene Schneeberg and the Department of Justice Center for Faith-Based and Neighborhood Partnerships, who worked very hard to make today's event happen. And let me begin by just bringing you greetings from the Attorney General of the United States. As you know, he started this week by kicking off what, by all accounts, was a very successful 2-day summit at the National Forum on Youth Violence. That we all kind of came together and talked about this issue and talked about some great solutions. He talked about expanding the forum to 4 additional cities, and he wanted me to be sure to express his appreciation for all of the work, not only that our champions of change do every day on youth violence, but what so many of you do day in and day out when it comes to reducing violence and bringing real positive change to our communities. Because the issue of preventing youth violence is one that the Attorney General and I are deeply committed to. As he often likes to say, fighting violence in our cities and building a fair and effective justice system, a system that keeps citizens safe, yet is one that maintains its legitimacy in the eyes of those that it serves. That is a challenge that has never been more difficult or more urgent than it is today. And I think it's noteworthy that we are coming together on what is the 44th anniversary of the death of Dr. Martin Luther King, coming together to recognize the great work of our 12 youth violence champions today, because Dr. King often spoke of life's most persistent, most urgent question: what are you doing for others? And the champions of change that we celebrate here today, and those of you who work with them in communities across this country, you are answering that question every single day with persistence and patience and resilience. And like him, you are catalysts of change, you are catalysts of peace, and it's an honor to be with you today. I, for one, know how difficult it is and how hard and challenging your work is. 15 years ago, I was a a federal prosecutor, and I all too often witness the devastating effects of crime, particularly violent crime, on individuals, on families, on entire communities. And I know firsthand that prosecuting a crime after it occurs is a critically important part of achieving justice. Because let's be clear, those who perpetrate crimes on others, who create that kind of violence, they must be sanctioned, they must be held accountable. The needs of victims must be met. But I also know that we must work diligently at every level of our society, in our homes, in our communities, in our schools and houses of worship, to prevent violent acts from occurring in the first place. And when you look at the statistics, you see why that is. According to the Centers for Disease Control, homicide is the second leading cause of death for our youth. An average of 14 young people are murdered every single day. That is unacceptable. And we know through our own research at the Department of Justice that a majority of kids, over 60%, regardless of race, are exposed to some form of violence, crime, abuse, ranging from brief encounters as witnesses to being direct victims themselves. And tragically, many of these kids are victimized repeatedly. And while it's true that crime rates across this country are at an historic low, we know that too many of our communities are still struggling to beat back the rising tide of violence, much of it committed by and against young people. And yet, we also know that youth violence is not inevitable. We can help prevent that violence by intervening, by counseling, rewarding good behavior with positive reinforcements, by mentoring and by spending quality time with our young people, by helping them to expand their horizons, by exposing them to all that the world has to offer beyond their own personal experience. Research and experience demonstrate that when communities engage, as Asim was talking about, in a multidisciplinary partnership, when we adopt balanced, data-driven approaches, violence decreases while desirable outcomes for our young people improve. Because a comprehensive initiative requires a balanced approach that makes room for prevention, intervention, and reentry efforts in addition to enforcement. Prevention and intervention programming are absolutely critical if we're going to ever break the cycle of violence. That's why the work that you do and the work of the National Forum on Youth Violence Prevention is so essential, I think, to our shared future. Together, we're joining citizens and communities, faith-based organizations, law enforcement, public health professionals, business and philanthropic leaders, and others to address youth and gang violence in a strategic, comprehensive manner. And today, we are recognizing the outstanding work and accomplishments that all of you have made in the areas of prevention, intervention, enforcement, and reentry. Your efforts and the 6 cities that you represent, Boston, Chicago, Detroit, Memphis, Salinas, and the city where I grew up and my parents live still, San Jose, California, are at the forefront of strategies that are entering the implementation phase of the comprehensive violence prevention plans. And I want you to know that the Department of Justice is committed to standing with you, working with you as you work to curb youth violence. For instance, I know many of you are familiar with the Attorney General's Defending Childhood initiative, which seeks to prevent children's exposure to violence and direct victimization, seeks to mitigate the effects when violence occurs, and to augment research and increase public awareness about the issue. Because the research confirms what all of us in this room witness in our own communities, that when children are exposed to violence, they are more likely to suffer from depression, alcohol and substance abuse, poor academic performance, and sadly, they are more likely to be perpetrators of violence themselves. So focusing on our youth meets not just individual or family concerns. Focusing on our youth can address the concerns of all of us, young and old, teachers and students, employers and employees. This is a responsibility of the entire community. And as you've shown, successful anti-violence intervention efforts require the active engagement of a cross-section of community residents. And it's not only kids, by the way, who have been direct victims or exposed to violence who suffer. The research also tells us that children of incarcerated parents often struggle with depression, learning disabilities, aggression, undermining their own chances of success. And when you look at those impacts, we find that the reverberations of this hit particularly hard in the African American and Latino communities, where incarceration rates for young men are shockingly high. So one of the aspects of the Attorney General's Defending Childhood initiative invites us to look at ways to factor this data-driven knowledge into our criminal justice policies, whether making it easier for kids to remain in touch with their parents while they're in prison through mentoring and other programs, other things that can address the needs, special needs of these children. And part of that is looking at family reunification as a vital element in inmate reentry planning. Almost all of the inmates, prisoners in jail and in prison, they're going to all be released at some point. Most of them will be released at some point. And studies show that connections with one's family are one of the best indicators of potential reentry success. So we're making a strong effort to incorporate reunification under our Second Chance Act programs that are administered at the Department of Justice. Equally important, we must ensure that victims are getting the services that they need. Sadly, just as young men of color are overrepresented in the corrections system, we find that they are often, too often, the victims of the violence, whether it's youth violence or gang violence. And our Office of Victims of Crime is supporting projects that are designed to help and improve our response. So at the Department of Justice, we're proud to continue to work with you to stop youth violence and to help restore futures for our young men and women in communities across this nation. All of us realizes in your cities and towns across this country and here in Washington that times are tough, that budgets are tight, but we also know that we fail to invest in our young people at our own peril. So let us pool our ideas, let us pool our resources. Most importantly, let us engage in a collective will in this common cause. I know the issues can seem daunting, and I know the work is not easy, but I believe there is good news. I believe there is reason for optimism. And I believe that reason is all of you in this room. People like you who every day are confronting these issues. Every day you're making the lives of young people better, more optimistic, more hopeful. Every day you're answering Dr. King's call. You're answering what he called the knock at midnight, that challenge that stirs you to answer pressing human need with personal engagement. Because your work in this area is an investment. And the return on that investment is measured not in dollars and cents. No, it's far more valuable than that. The return on your investment is measured in the hearts you touch, the souls you enrich, the doors you open, and the lives that you change. So thank you for that investment, thank you for that work, and thank you for having me here this afternoon. now I get the great honor of introducing to you the champions of change that are here at the front of the room. First, let me introduce, and if I'll ask you to either stand or to wave so that everyone knows exactly who you are. Beginning right to my left, Andrea Perry from Boston, Massachusetts, with Youth Connect. Pastor Keith Norman from Memphis, Tennessee, the First Baptist Church, Broad Avenue. A dear, dear friend from home who said to me when I greeted her here, she said, "You left us." And I said, "No, I just grew up. I just got old." Cora Tomalinas from San Jose, California, Mayor's Game Prevention Task Force. Michael Rodriguez from Chicago, Illinois, Enlace, Chicago. There's the chief down at the end there, Deputy Chief of Police Kelly McMillan from Salinas, California. And Daquan O'Neill, who is from Detroit, Michigan, the Neighborhood Service Organization's Youth Initiative Project. And then standing, we have Emmett Folgert from Boston, Massachusetts, the Dorchester Youth Collaborative. Monica Haslip from Chicago, Illinois, Little Black Pearl and Options Laboratory School. Frank McGee, Neighborhood Service Organization's Youth Initiative Project. Marlon Foster from Memphis, Tennessee, Knowledge Quest. Fernanda O'Connor from Salinas, California, Community Alliance for Safety and Peace and Building Healthy Communities in East Salinas. And last but not least, Danny Sanchez from San Jose, California, the Mayor's Faith-Based Task Force. So now I think we get to actually hear from our champions of change, and I have the great privilege of being able to moderate the first panel, which will be seated. I guess I can invite you all who are standing to take a seat, who will be part of the second panel that we'll have. And Andrea, why don't I start with you? Your organization, Youth Connect, has really sort of adopted this broad view of preventing youth violence, this comprehensive approach that we've been talking about this morning. Can you talk a little bit about how your organization does that and what you look at in terms of the underlying or root causes of youth violence?
Sure. So Youth Connect really is a partnership program. We're a program in the Boys and Girls Clubs of Boston in partnership with the Boston Police Department. And it allows us to place clinical social workers inside the police department to work with young people that the officers have concerns about. It doesn't stop the arrest, but it realizes that after the arrest, then what? So we really take an individual approach, and we sit down with each young person and his or her family and say, how can we help? How can we help you have less contact with the police department? How can we build on your strengths? And sometimes it's as simple as helping a very overwhelmed family. And I say family because even though the referral is about a young person, we take this holistic approach. And we know that sometimes helping the mom or the dad or the grandmother or the auntie can really be the best strategy to help everybody in that family. So whether it's a substance abuse issue, a basic need around food, heat, things like that, a small connection to a resource out in the community, or a lot of advocacy, a lot of pulling together. Maybe it's a special education coordinator, a probation officer, Department of Youth Services, and really kind of coming together and figuring out how all those systems can work in conjunction to best serve that family. And then we really have, we're free and we don't deal with insurance, so we have as long of a time as it takes to really develop a relationship with a young person, provide counseling in non-traditional ways. Lots of young people don't want to be in therapy. They don't want to have counseling, but they want somebody to talk to. And if you say you're going to come back next week, they'll take that. And so it's not office-based, it's out in the community. We're going to homes, we're going to schools, we're going into jails, we're going to youth detention centers, and we're really saying, how can we help you succeed? How can we help you achieve your goals? And so we kind of become experts at becoming generalists. It could be a housing issue, substance abuse, mental health, all of those underlying issues that have caused them to come onto the radar screen of the police department. And we stay involved as long as it takes, or as long as they want us. So they're in charge, and it's really an individualized approach.
Yeah, well, one of the important features of the work that you do is that relationship with law enforcement. Let me ask Deputy Chief McMillan, who's been in law enforcement now for almost 30 years, when you look at your career in terms of combating youth violence, can you talk a little bit about some of the biggest challenges that you have faced in trying to do that effectively, and maybe you can also talk a little bit about the ceasefire initiative that you have in the city of Salinas.
Well, certainly the modern challenges, and won't come as a surprise to anyone in this room who represents any kind of agency, has really been resource. We're resource constrained, and so like everybody in the room, you've had to focus your energies for best effect, and really that's why I think the direction modern law enforcement is going. And Mr. West referenced the ceasefire project. Salinas, California is a Boston ceasefire implementation site. We've been engaged in that strategy for about 2 years now, a little over 2 years, and we've really seen it make quite a difference. And the beauty of that ceasefire strategy is it focuses law enforcement resources two ways. It focuses them on those in the community who would do the most violence, who would do the most harm, that are at large right now. And then it focuses other resources in trust-building exercises and in supporting roles in the community, where we're able to go out to these young men who are at very high risk of committing violence and say, we're here to help you and we absolutely mean to support you, and if you take our help, we'll see you on a pathway out of violence. But if you refuse, we'll bring the full weight of enforcement against you and remove you from society. And I think the net result of that is that the community really starts to see legitimacy in law enforcement. Our role becomes much more legitimate. We do a lot of things in law enforcement that are lawful. We're able to do them. The old model for working gangs was drive around in black and whites and look for people who looked like gang members and find probable cause to contact them and see if they were in fact gang members. That's lawful. I've become fond of quoting Father Greg Boyle of Homeboy Industries. He says, well, a lot of things that work don't necessarily help. And that, I think, was one of them. So we've given up doing that kind of patrol. We focus our resources where they need to be, and the community understands that's what they expect of law enforcement. It's legitimate, and it actually helps decrease violence. And the other side of it is our community is understanding that when police officers say we're here to help, we are supported by a community who stands behind us and with us and provides that support. And so this net result has been, even though we have fewer officers to do our job, violence is decreasing, and trust and legitimacy within the community is increasing. It's really been a remarkable time.
Well, poor Tom Lees, Deputy Chief McMillan talked about a model of fighting gang violence, an old model, an outdated model. You're someone who's been a member of the Mayor's Gang Prevention Task Force for a long time, and you have seen quite a bit in San Jose on this issue. Can you talk a little bit about sort of what you have seen in terms of gang violence in San Jose and how that has changed over the years and through some of the work that you've been doing?
First of all, gang violence is not just youth. It's perpetrated by everybody. In San Jose, the mandate for all police, all San Jose PD, the mandate is you will treat the people that are impacted, the youth that are impacted with gang violence, both the victims and the perpetrators, as our children. You will treat them with justice, and you will treat them with love. It's been like that in San Jose for over 20 years, as you know. but it's not always easy to keep the balance. And you talked about that as well. So it's imperative that all through the services and all through the years, the community is an equal partner. The seat should not be behind the table. The community seat is on the table, equal partner. Those are our children after all. And then you might ask, why the violence? I think right now there's lots of children. There's lots of children that are committing violence for the want of a hug. We, I think as community, have forgotten that God's love is as big as a hug. You know, a while back, I teach catechism, by the way, for little children 5 to 7 years old. A while back, they came to me for some reason or another. They came to me with flowers one day. One had dandelion, and one had, they picked it up on the way, so they're just wild flowers. But this little boy brought me a paper flower. And the girls were laughing, and they said, "No, that's a paper flower. Why?" He says, "Well, it lasts longer." And then away he went with his mother. But he came back. He came back and he says, "Mrs. T," like this. And he gave me a hug. And he says, "That one you keep in your heart. I love you. That one you keep in your heart." I think as a community we need to remember that. Remember, God's love is as big as a hug. And the kiss you keep in your heart. And you keep reminding that to all the officials. You are here today. Please remember. And Chief, remember. Keep it in your heart. That's what this administration and this country should do if we are to stay the greatest country in the world. Right?
Well, you know, you talk about our children, of course, so I'm tempted to go to Daquan next, but you also talked about God's love, so I've got Pastor Keith Norman right on the other side of you. So Daquan, we're going to come to you, but I think we have to go to the pastor next. So talk a little bit about, Pastor, if you will, you've been at First Baptist now for 12 years or so. Talk a little bit, sort of picking up on Cora's theme, about what faith leaders can do collectively to address this issue of youth violence effectively, but also to make sure it remains a priority.
Thank you. Faith leaders have the opportunity, because we are trusted stakeholders within the community, to be a part of the plan in the beginning. We don't want to be reactive, we want to be proactive. We have insisted in Memphis that we are at the table when plans are developed, when ideas come forth, and that we are a part of helping to really implement plans. Because when community is broken, when people are broken, where do they go? They go to the church looking for healing, they go looking for love, they go looking for restoration. And so we insist on being a part of the plan up front. We work together across community lines. It's not just the traditional church as you see it. We have partners from the synagogue, from the mosque. We have the temples out in the far east part of our city, working with all denominations across denominational lines. We insist on saving our children, and we insist on working together in that process. We know that we have to repair the breach. The church that I serve was a church that is in a very declining community. And when we began to grow and succeed, we insisted on remaining where we are. Oftentimes we see churches uproot and they move out of the inner city and they go to the suburban areas in order to grow and expand. We decided that we needed to stay right where we were. We weren't going to give up on any of our children. We weren't going to give up on any of the things that were going on. We weren't going to let gun violence drive us out. We weren't going to let the needs drive us away. We've been very happy to see crime go down in our community by over 40%. We've been very happy to see young people come to our church and find restoration and after-school programs and the gymnasium that we built. Instead of building a church first, we decided to build a community center first because we knew the kids needed activities. They needed a place where they could be loved, where they could be nurtured. We wanted to invest in children. We wanted to invest in their future with scholarships. We took a long-standing program in our church, and rather than having a lot of programs that assisted adults, we wanted to assist children. We wanted to make sure that they got fair access to college and they could get help with continuing education. And so I think we're right in the efforts that we're making through Department of Justice and through other efforts that we're making with faith-based organizations and initiatives. We start on the ground and we start working where it really works. We partner with our local government. We partner with our mayor. We partner with our police chief. We've all been at the table this week. We've all been a part of the DOJ's think tank, so to speak, if you will, and designing policy for the future. We recognize that we cannot arrest our way out of this situation. We cannot put every child in jail that commits a crime. We cannot lock them up. Some children have other needs. Some need father figures, and some need mentors. Some need those who will just love them and share the fact that we care. We insist on doing that in our church, and we just won't give up on our children at all.
That's great. You know, one of the themes that you hear across all of the comments is the need for people from various disciplines, whether it's law enforcement, faith, nonprofit community, what have you, to kind of come together and attack different aspects of this problem. But one of the things that's really most inspiring to me is when you see young people who kind of step up and say, you know, this is something that I can play a role in as well. And so that leads me to Daquan O'Neill, who for a while you have been a member of this neighborhood service organization, the Youth Initiatives Project. And Daquan, maybe you can talk a little bit about both what inspired you to sort of get involved in that initiative and then what you do as part of that initiative.
Okay, what kind of inspired me to do it? Well, really what inspired me to do was I want to see a better future than what it is today, because it's a lack of respect in the community that I live in, and all we want to do is really, youth want to see people actually come to them and tell them, you know, stop doing that. Like y'all was saying, they want to see somebody actually telling them what to do, because most of the time where they live at, ain't nobody telling them what to do. It's like they're on their own. So if you got somebody actually coming to you every day telling you, pull your pants up, constantly telling you, the first time you're like, oh, why are you talking to me? Second time you're like, oh my God. And then the third time you're like, okay, they really care about me. So the fourth time, when he walk past you, his pants are not gonna be down. So I just wanted to be a person that actually helped my peers. I want to see my peers actually become something, you know, and I want to see my kids have a better future than I have right now. So that's the reason why I actually joined YIP, because I noticed that me being in YIP actually helped me be engaged in a lot of different things, just like coming here to Washington. So that's what I did.
We are glad you're here. Thank you for being here. Michael Rodriguez, tell us a little bit about Enlace, Chicago. You know, it serves a lot of organizations, or a lot of individuals and a lot of families, particularly in the Little Village community of Chicago. And you know, we've been talking about this comprehensive approach. Do you find it's common for your organization to really serve entire families simultaneously with various service and various needs?
So before I go into that question, I just feel like I have to recognize some people in this room. Corazón, what you just said right now, and if you guys don't know, corazón means heart in English. I mean, your words were just so touching, and the love that you exude, and the love that's from this table, and the young man, I'm just excited to be, I'm awed and inspired and humbled to be with this group. I also want to recognize Felicia Davis here from the mayor's office in the city, who's been a leader in violence prevention and engaging families in the Chicago area for years and bringing people together. You know, the Little Village community is a community of about 100,000 residents. It's a Mexican-American community on the southwest side of Chicago. It's the largest concentration of Mexican-Americans in the Midwest. Mayor Rahm Emanuel just said that our 26th Street, our business district, was the second magnificent mile in the city of Chicago. Vibrant economy. But our community has a lot of challenges. My wife and I, my wife Jackie, who's here in the room with me today, we have a 7-week-old daughter, our first child. And several weeks ago, we took her out for her first walk in a Little Village community. And at the end of our walk, we heard 4 gunshots. This is the reality of our families in the neighborhoods that we're living in and that we're working in. A week after we heard those gunshots, we heard other gunshots at 3:30 in the afternoon on a Saturday, and a 6-year-old girl by the name of Aaliyah Shell was murdered. She was the unintended target of this crime, of this heinous shooting. So the work that we do really has to be about families. It has to be not just about adults, but it has to be about the Kwan. It has to be about my daughter Sophia. It has to be about our young people and bringing them together. Too many times, I think we create policies and systems that aren't really thinking about our young people. When we had a war on drugs in the early 80s, we went from 500,000 to now 2.5 million people incarcerated in our federal and state penitentiaries with no decrease in drug usage, right? In the state of Illinois, it costs $67,000 a year to incarcerate a young person in juvenile detention, but it costs 1/10 of that in a community-based alternative, right? With much better rates at reducing recidivism. You know, our work in our community is about bridging that gap between families, but I think as policymakers, we need to be smarter on crime, not necessarily just tougher on crime. And I think Kelly here talked directly about being smarter on crime. That's what we need to institute in our communities. And partly doing that is through involving families and engaging both young people and families to develop solutions to our issues and to really come back to what Corazon was talking about. It's that love, it's that engagement at all levels that's really going to lead us to more safe and prosperous communities. That's what we want for our community. That's what I want for my daughter, Sophia.
Michael, thank you, and thank you to all of you, all of the champions of change, for not only the comments today, but for your tireless work, dedication to trying to make our communities a little bit better and creating a better future for our young people. Thank you. And that's just the first half. I think we have a second half here. And let me introduce from the White House Office of Public Engagement to moderate the second panel, Paul Montero.
Thank you, Mr. Secretary. And at this point, I'd like to welcome our second panel up to the stage, as it were. And good afternoon, everyone. My name is Paul Montero. I'm an Associate Director in the Office of Public Engagement. One of the things I work on is helping to coordinate our mentorship program for young men in the city in collaboration with the First Lady's program, mentoring young women in Washington, D.C. and Maryland. I've been in the job for 3 years, so you can see how it's aged me. A lot of times people think I'm in high school, so. Great. And I want to welcome our panel. It's really a privilege for me to be with you, reading your stories and your blog posts and learning more about the amazing work you're doing, and seeing that you are indeed all champions in the work that you're doing across the country. I was going to introduce each one of you, but I think it'd be best if you just, again, say your name and your organization, and then we'll start with the questions. Let's start at the far end.
Frank McGee, Program Director, NSO Youth Initiatives Project.
Monica Haslip, Founder and Executive Director of Little Black Pearl in Chicago.
Emmett Folgert, Executive Director of the Dorchester Youth Collaborative in Boston.
Fernanda Caña, resident of Salinas, representing my city, also advocate for building happy communities.
Marlon Foster, Founding Director of Knowledge Quest.
Pastor Danny Sanchez, Volunteer Community Chaplain for San Jose, California.
Great. And let's jump right into what Pastor Sanchez, understanding you're a member of the Mayor's Faith-Based Task Force and a member of your city's Gang Prevention Task Force. Can you tell us a bit about your role there and the work that you do?
Well, what I do is I follow up with families in crisis. When there's a homicide, we go and we bring peace in the time of crisis. We bring hope to those who are hopeless and love to those who are hurting in the community. The faith-based initiative we have in San Jose is the faith community churches all involved together, volunteering to serve the community. And I was a part of the gang lifestyle. I relate to the pain these families are going through. And so what we do is we bring peace and we bring that love to them in the time of hurting. Also, we're working on a program, a hospital intervention program, something that is close to me because I was a victim of a stabbing, and I wish somebody would have came to me and said there's more to life. I wish somebody would have spoken to my life. But now we get to bring that hope to the hopeless. We get to bring that life in the midst of near death. And so, again, what we do is the faith community volunteers, and we bring a light in a dark time in San Jose.
Thank you. And as you mentioned here in your blog post, you have firsthand experience with the gang culture, and you took lessons from that inform your work today, and the hospital-based intervention, I think, is a good example of that. What are some other lessons that you take and apply to the work you're doing on an everyday basis?
Just I apply that, the things that I've been through in my life, I've been incarcerated, I've been, abused, just all these things, and I try to bring that to the kids and the people of San Jose to give them that hope and help them to realize that they have more, to get them out of their 5-foot view of life and give them a 30,000-foot view, because, I know, if you look at my life, I know that there's hope. I mean, I went from a hospital bed almost being murdered to the White House. These kids can find hope, and that's what I would share with these kids, and that's what I encourage each and every one of us. Everybody hurts, and everybody has hurt at one time in their life. We can applaud success, but all of us identify with pain, and we could share that we can come out of that darkness into the wonderful light. So, again, I just bring that, from the darkness to life, from death to life, and to know that those, who that are forgiven much, they can love much. And that's probably the realest way I could share that is, if you're forgiven much, you love much, and they could see their potential. They know that, that we can get out of where we are. This lifestyle. Mostly we're dealing with gang members specifically that just need love.
Thank you. That's a powerful testimony of yours. I want to hopscotch down the table to Ms. Haslip out of Chicago with the Little Black Pearl and the Options Laboratory School. And you established that school in 2011, so it's relatively new.
Yes.
And can you just tell us about how big is it and how do you select students for the program?
Well, the school is an art and technology-based school. We have 175 high school students, and really was designed for us to bring children back to school. Most of the children in Options are students that either had dropped out of school or were at risk for dropping out. So our goal as a community-based organization was to create a school within the community where young people could be inspired to learn again. So we spend most of our time there creating not only opportunities in the arts, but we have extended day opportunities for them because we found that most of the activity that happens with them around violence happens after school. And many of the students that were involved in violence in our community were students that had dropped out of school or that were at risk for dropping out. Most of the time, if there was a violent act It was a student who did not go to school that day, or a student who had dropped out of school. So as a community-based organization, we really felt that, it was an opportunity for us to demonstrate that we should all be fully engaged and involved in the process, helping young people see real, tangible examples. I was a young person who started an organization in the basement of my home and was able to operate out of my home for 11 years and then build a 40,000 square foot facility. So for them to see that happen with someone that lives in the community and understanding that they have the same opportunities that I had, and that exposing them to a school that teaches them skills and that puts them back on the track for college and careers really was our main objective. We wanted to make sure that they had a place that they could walk to every day, a place that was familiar, that was filled with adults that provided love and care, working with their parents, because many of my children, they live in the community, and we have some that travel very far to attend options. And what was exciting for us this year, we just opened in September. We had students that had been out of school for over 100 days last year who are now, they've only missed 4 or 5 days of school. And it just said so much to us about what love and care can do, and the right kind of setting for young people who are not necessarily performing well in traditional high schools. Just creating a smaller, more supportive environment that had more holistic supports for them. And we're seeing them do extraordinary things. We have a group that are going to Germany over the summer to display some of their work at a very large exhibition called Documenta. We have a group that are going to North Carolina. We have a glass blowing facility on site, so they're actually selling some of their glass works at an exhibition during the summer in North Carolina. So it really was an opportunity to get them to think broader and also see how education was relevant to their lives and how it actually connects to what's going to happen to provide a successful future for them.
And do you have in the school sort of school resource officers that, how do you sort of talk to the students about violence prevention to sort of keep them from going that way?
So, the interesting thing about a community-based organization opening a school is that we all do everything. And so the fortunate thing is young people have, every encounter they have with an adult in our school, we are all talking the same language. We are all preaching the same message, which is really to better understand what's going on in their lives when they're in and out of school, and what kind of support can we provide to them beyond their school experience. And so every day, every adult in our space, we meet and really discuss what's going on in the lives of the children that are in our school. 175 children gives us the luxury of knowing them, of being able to know them, know their families, understand what's going on in their lives. And since I've been doing this work since September, I've been doing work in the community for 18 years. But opening this school in September changed my life. It changed my view on what's happening with youth in relationship to education. I understand now that many, many of our children that are not in school want to be in school. They are not in school because they don't want to be. They are not there because of many other barriers that keep them away from it. So it's just a wonderful opportunity for us to really hear their voice and help them identify a path to get to the goals that they have in their mind. They still are dreaming. They still have great dreams about the things that they want to do in their lives. They just have not had a lot of vehicles to share those dreams. And what we're hoping to do is to invite other community-based organizations to really look at ways that we can all collaborate with our faith-based partners and schools and other entities to wrap some services and love around these children so they can be successful.
And I think that's something I want to follow up on in terms of what are some of the community partners you're currently working with, and what are some other partners you're looking to work with going forward to sort of increase your effectiveness?
So we work with a really broad array of partners, large institutions, the Art Institute, the Museum of Science and Industry, DuSable Museum, a lot of colleges, University of Chicago, and one of our goals is to make sure that these partnerships are really prominent in our children's lives while they're in the schools. So we have dual enrollment opportunities for students. So they get a chance to actually, in their senior year, dually enroll in a college. And so it helps them have a real tangible goal to work towards while they're in school. So we try to have real broad partnerships that allow us to identify what they have an interest and passion for, and then match them with other opportunities in the community to continue to pursue that.
Well, thank you for sharing and for the work you're doing. Our friend from Salinas, California, I want to go to next, Fernanda. And one of the things that I enjoyed reading all your blog posts, but one of the things that jumped out from yours was you said, I grew up believing that I had to make a difference. And so I guess my first question to you is, working through the Building Healthy Communities program, what led you to that, and was there a particular reason or a mentor that sort of pushed you in that direction?
Yes, definitely. Growing up in East Salinas as a Latina, we're not expected to do much. Everything started with, I was a participant in Program Call Girls Inc. I got to, go through the program. It was really good information, how to get ready for interviews, so on. But it wasn't until I became a youth leader, I learned how to, a lot of the people in my community, especially the girls, they feel like they can't go so far. So I learned to teach them that if a door closes, another one opens. You have to find your way around. My mom always tells me, Mija, you can do it. You can do it. And the thing is, my mom tells me, and I see how much of a hard woman she is, but we don't really have people in the White House, Latina women that, we can look up to. Also, so it was just the fact that I saw younger girls that would come to me, they had problems, and I was able to make a difference by talking to them. It's about love, about care, about expectation, about, sometimes we youth feel like we can make a difference. Until today, I can't believe I'm here. I feel like I'm in a dream. It's amazing. It's just the fact that I want to make a difference. I want to show my community that we can make a difference with the help of mentors. Someone that's going to push you, tell you, you think you can do it, you can do it. Like my mom tells me, Brian has told me, many other people have told me, like Patty Fernandez too, they tell me, you can do it, what are you thinking? If you weren't such a good leader, you wouldn't be able to do it. So really help other youth understand that they can make a difference, they can make a change. They don't just have to graduate from high school and not be in a gang. It's about, you can make a change in your life and other people's lives. It's not necessarily just with money and stuff like that. It's more about helping each other. Money helps a lot. But, if I'm able to make you smile when you had a bad day, that makes my day whole much better. And it's just showing that to the youth, because eventually we're going to take over. It's just, the support. For me, it was the love from my mom, my little brother too. He inspires me to want to do something for my community. He's 15. I want to make sure that he's capable of walking to school, coming back, and he's okay. Not having to worry, is he going to be okay? And he's doing great in school and everything, but even if you're not really associated with certain gang and stuff, as you guys already know, it's dangerous. So basically, try working with the adults. You guys help us improve, help us learn how to be good leaders. You teach us, guide us. So thank you.
Sure. Now, before you leave, I want to make sure to introduce you to a few Latinas who are senior administration officials here that it would be great for you to meet. But let's talk about your college career and beyond that. What are some sort of next steps? Have you thought about what comes next for you after you graduate from college and beyond? And would you continue working with Building Healthy Communities? What are some things you're thinking about for yourself?
Well, I want to continue with my community. I know we have great Latino women, but I'm just saying, when you come from a little town, everybody wants to know, oh yes, you know, that person came from my town. So I just want to, my original plan was doing business administration, which I still am planning on doing, but also focus on social services, work in my community, and basically just try to inspire more and help people understand that it's about love, care, both from adults and the youth. So I'm planning on sticking around.
All right, thank you so much. And Reverend Foster from, yeah, that's worth a round of applause. Reverend Foster from Memphis. I definitely remember your blog post because it was the only one written in a lot of caps. Like, it was a lot of emphatic language in it. And I know you're really excited about your work broadly. You know, can you tell us, you know, what is the thing you're most proud of around Knowledge Quest and the work you're doing? If you can say one thing.
Wow, I guess it would really be Just the Babies. We've been around about 15 years now with Knowledge Quest. And what we do, our mission, we say vigorously equip youth to maximize their potential, intellectual and character development. So for us, with 15 years, you get a chance to see students go from a small elementary age up to these now young adults. So that's probably been the highlight of our day, just seeing that transition with me starting. Knowledge Quest was my first job out of college, about in my early 20s. So it's been a journey. But what we do every day is we started trying to see how do we really impact youth violence and what's going to make the most sense on the ground. As many have shared, my wife Sheila and I, we live, work, and worship right on Walker Avenue, right in South Memphis. And that part of being located there gives another view of what's really real and what's happening on the ground. So for us, when Knowledge Quest got started, Dan and I were sharing a couple of war stories. It was my drive comes from the death of my childhood best friend. You know, our other best friend, he went to jail. They killed him in jail, and you know, and I'm here. So you know, you come from that kind of experience, saying, okay, why am I here? What is the broader purpose for my life? So that's how Knowledge Quest got started. And we started in one of our community public housing developments that was dealing with a lot of youth violence as well. So one of the first kids I met was a kid whose best friend had just got gunned down. He was 15 years old. And I was channeling my retribution and my revenge of sorts in a positive way. And we started in our neighborhood with a peace mural. The peace mural was just, okay, how can we channel all this energy? How can we honor David and do something long-lasting? From that peace mural, we did a gang graffiti removal project. Now, mind you, it was other gang members, you know, taking down other gang members' graffiti, but there was a peace truce on the front end that this is the way we're going to have peace during this activity. Some of the early other things in violence, against youth violence, we looked at relationships. I think the relationships that have been built are probably, that's our greatest source of capital. For us, it's all about relationships. So when we talk about gangs, I understand that I can't go in for me and eradicate this deep entrenched gang culture that's in my neighborhood, but what I can do is try to redirect. So I go in and say, hey, you know, there are a lot of gangs. You got Rotary clubs, you got fraternities, you got sororities, but how are you going to direct your gang? You know, what distinguishes those are their purpose. So we take that approach, and for Knowledge Quest, the program activity through the after-school efforts, the urban education, urban agriculture efforts, it's our prevention piece. So initially, 15 years ago, we asked those gang members, let's just give these a pass. Will you allow us just to work with these elementary students? Let's not recruit them in. So it was about slowing down recruitment. And then from there, it was about redirection with some of the older gang members. And now those students that were young, that were in elementary school, are now the 18 to early 20-year-olds, and some are still claimed that identity. But what has happened over the time through those relationships, 15 years with Knowledge Quest right there on the ground, is that there's a level of respect and honor amongst what we do and how it's done. And that's even when violence occurs. I'll end with this. Our latest effort is a restorative neighborhood council, because for those on this panel in the audience, you know that many times when violence occurs, it's things being worked out on the ground. The police are rarely called until after it happens. So we're starting a center to say, how can we work some of those things out in a positive way before the police come at the end of the day and bodies are already laid out. So those relationships have been built through all of that is probably our highest moment.
And I saw your purpose, or one of the vision statements was to transform lives by expanding minds. And I guess my second question is sort of how do you work to involve parents and guardians in the work you're doing with students through Knowledge Quest?
Yes, as Monica mentioned, education, we started seeing early on that some of the behavior, early second, third grade, was due to lack of academic performance in the classroom. So for us, education became an intricate part. So my wife, Sheila, that's in the audience, is a Spanish teacher, and her background is in curriculum development and instruction. So we take 50, 60 concepts of math and science, 25, 30 so concepts of English language arts, and we give students a hands-on way of learning. So when they come to our center, we ask the teachers, what can we do to be your servants? So if they're studying the solar system at school, they'll make a model solar system at Knowledge Quest. So then they're more comfortable and confident with the subject matter, go back to school and they read about it. So those ways of engaging have really helped us to kind of move the needle when it comes to education.
And how did you develop the curriculum for the Adventure Education Program at Knowledge Quest?
Again, we work pre-K through 12th grade, and in all settings, it's a non-fee-based program. And in all settings, we go into the faculty meetings, and we tell the teachers, you know, we're your servants, what can we do to help? And we align what's happening at our center, hands-on, we call it Adventure Education, with those school day assignments. So it's a direct correlation, and again, it goes back to those relationships with the school. So students begin to, that confidence builder through taking a pencil and paper away really helps. And, you know, we do all the other things that you'll see in our awesome after-school programs, Spanish clubs, French clubs, chess clubs. You know, tell a kid, you know, hey, you can go to college on a chess scholarship. We have sports teams. We're real big on baseball. So it's all about all these ways that where we cater programming efforts around student interests. And when they're empowered through their own interests, we've seen that to be really positive for us.
Thank you so much. And let's go down to Frank McGee from Detroit with the Neighborhood Services Organization. Can you tell us a bit about how you became the program director there, and what do you see as the greatest challenge to young people you're working with?
Actually, I was told by the youth themselves that I needed to train them, and that was back in September of 1999 at the main library of the city of Detroit. And these youth came together because of their concerns about the issue of violence and sexual assault on the way to and from school. And my role was to actually help them put together a forum. And they did a terrific job, including inviting the police to join us for the first time, and mixing in the gang squad of the police department with the actual gang members, something that was not supposed to happen. But it did that day, and it led to more discussions with them along the way. We got onto something brand new because we realized that at the end of the discussions, that meeting, that conference, really was the beginning of a youth-driven approach in the city of Detroit, unlike nothing that was ever seen. Now the youth were saying, we want to be at the table. Now the youth were saying that we want to be engaged. And as you can see with DeQuan O'Neill, he felt right as rain, being up here on the panel and talking about his passions, his concern about his community. The program just grew from there. And I had no plans on actually running it. My plan was to do what I could and work for city government in some way. That's not how it turned out. You see, I realized that for my past, I was connected, deeply connected to what they were going through. My brother was killed because he was involved in a drug gang as well. And so even though we came from the same womb, I went one direction, he went another. And we see that. Many of us have family members who go through that. So I had a deep and personal connection to the challenges they faced. And so I worked with them in putting together a program that they knew that they could be proud of, that they knew would help them to prepare for their future. So it wasn't just about dealing with the issue of violence, but it was also about preparing them to look down into the future, knowing that they would live past the age of 21, being able to buy a house, get a car, get married, retire one day. For a lot of the youth that we worked with at that time, that was not a possibility. And for many of us, we know this. This is a fact. And so our job at that time was to reconnect them And that process continued in mentoring and in training their peers to mentor their other peers, which is the key. And in helping them to put together activities and campaigns that address the issue of violence, that address the issues of sexual assault, that address the issues of misunderstandings about what multiculturalism really is, because that is the 21st century, and we're seeing it now even with our president. And I honor that by being here today. Their latest creation last year was a Leadership Institute. A Leadership Institute that would allow them to fan out into the community and work with other community organizations and be a part of other steering committees and boards. And so that's what we did here in Detroit with the Violence Prevention Steering Committee and connected with Andy Ellington with the mayor's office. That was the first step. And then there were other steps along the way, making sure we maintain contact and support with the police department so there wouldn't be no misunderstanding. It started out, of course, earlier in the school year with a big meeting at Osborne High School involving state, federal, and local authorities and the police department with our youth. And of course, it ended with a challenge by one of our youth to a basketball game with Chief of Police. Even though the youth lost, yes, they did, to their surprise. What was beautiful about that was that a week later they were able to break bread at a male empowerment breakfast and convince 8, maybe 12 other gang members to show up. That was not the plan, but somebody put the heat on them from that peer group. You guys got to show up. And they're still engaged. And they've been engaged for the last month. They've been participating in all these activities that are youth-driven, that leads to more discussion and greater understanding. And so the ultimate goal of what we're talking about here is reconnecting our young people, particularly our young men. We're seeing that. So many of our young men are disconnected and going in a different direction. And so not only do we see adult role models reaching out to them, but their peers as well. And that's phenomenal, because now they feel that they're included in this process of change. You can't have effective change in the community while reaching out to those who are discarded in the first place. That's how we do it.
And what are some upcoming areas you want to start moving your neighborhood services organization into? What do you see coming up in the near future in terms of new initiatives or?
I see us moving in a direction on the internet, and so many of you already are exploring already. The youth are putting the heat on us, and rightly so. They see that as the undiscovered country, where you can use multimedia and all sorts of things to creatively get the word out about a particular issue. And so we're seeing new partnerships where we can work with those who have the expertise to train our youth how to put together PSAs, not just on television, but on the radio, to engage our youth in putting together what they call mini documentaries or mini docs, so that in 5 minutes or less, because of that attention span, you could be able to reach them far quicker than let's just say, a simple conversation, because it's visual, and you can see it, and right away, it inspires their peers to want to learn that technique as well. And of course, hip-hop is still there, but we want to use hip-hop in a different way, where hip-hop will be inspirational, not only talking about the tragedies and the challenges of the community, but also celebrating the differences of our community, our culture. That's what makes Detroit so unique.
Thank you. Thank you so much for sharing. And last but not least, Emmett from Boston, Massachusetts, the Dorchester Youth Collaborative, a frontline organization that's been around for 30 years. Is that right? I guess, was there any one instance or a moment where you knew you had to form this organization to fight crime or was there sort of a series of events that led you to sort of seeing a need to create this collaborative?
Well, you know, it was just observing the pain, the poverty, the jeopardy that young teenagers are in when they live in certain neighborhoods. I mean, it's quite horrific now, isn't it? You know, it's really 100% certainty over time that young people who live in certain neighborhoods will be witness and victim to violence, and they will be recruited by gangs in these specific areas. So I'm an old activist. I said, what are we waiting for? So we created these safe haven teen centers saying that these kids deserve a place that they can go for safety, for food, and to build relationships with stable adults just because they live in that neighborhood. They don't have to be arrested. Nothing bad has to happen yet, you know. So that's what we did, and it's worked. And then we looked at another desperate group who had already fallen away and become disconnected. And they were high school dropouts. There's millions of them now, isn't there? And they are unemployed generally and live in high poverty neighborhoods, and many have gang backgrounds and stuff. So we set up Safe City Academy. All it did was say if there's, you know, all these kids, and we can set up a GED program, we made it a work-study GED program. So they can earn up to $100 a week, and how do they do that? They build their own communities, because we make contracts with this city, our great city, to do work that was going out to private vendors, so that's actually revenue neutral. We're still only paying for the GED program. I'm here to say I'd like to see every GED program in every high poverty area in the country to have a work-study option where these young people can build their own communities. And look at how the status changed. Now all of a sudden, young person's a worker. They're a student. They're bringing milk home to their family. They're contributing. You know, they're proud of themselves. And finally, the thing was the media. It's horrible. It's killing us. The media is just killing us, the young people. So we set up something called the Center for Urban Expressions, CUE. You know, cue up the video, cue up the whatever it is. Acronyms are fun. And all that was inviting people, adults with a passion and skills in video and art, and music and dance, to our centers to work with young people to create powerful media products that fight back against the negative brand that our urban young people have, to tell these powerful stories, to have them ready for the reporters who are in the room that know about deadlines and know how to speak in sound bites like I've just been doing. So that's, I'm thrilled to be here, but the pain is amazing that the young people are facing, and they have a right to these things. And we need, we have an obligation. It's an imperative of it's part of our species of being adult humans. We need to do this for them if we call ourselves adults.
And just digging a bit into CUE, how many youths are involved in projects throughout the year with that project?
We reach 2,000 youth. Some of that is through, I don't know, 100 basketball teams. That's the easiest way to organize youth for the least amount of money. And then we have a Safe Haven Youth Center that will have about 400 kids during the year, and then some school-based programs and the performing arts programs as well, things that they really like to do. But it goes back to that relationship, one-on-one, looking a person in the eye too. Every day, every staff, talking in complete sentences to our young people and taking the time to listen to that complete sentence coming back. You have nothing if you have no relationship.
And another question, I guess, is sort of how has your organization interfaced with the Justice Department in terms of your work?
Well, we're here. Thank you.
Thank you for coming.
I'm hoping that there will be 1,000 GED programs that add a work-study component, and I'm hoping that people will consider having at least one safe place for these children to get out of the line of fire. They're very open to us, and we exist, so you can come and visit us, and you can see this in real time.
Let's have a round of applause for all of our champions on the team. Thank you very much. And at this point, I want to welcome my colleague Kyle Learman back to the podium for some other thoughts. Thank you.
Thank you so much all again for coming here. As I mentioned before, my name is Kyle Learman. I run the Champions of Change program. I think I have the best job in the White House because I get to read stories like those of your all's, and see all the inspiring work that folks like our champions here today are doing across the country. And it's really humbling to be here at the White House and be able to bring folks like these in every week. So I really just want to say thank you to all of you here, but I do have an ask for all of the champions and for all the folks in the crowd here today. We started the Champions program about a year ago because we don't have a monopoly on good ideas here at the White House or in Washington, D.C. We want to have folks like you guys come in every week and share those ideas with White House officials, with administration officials. But most importantly, it's actually to share it with the rest of the country, whether it's you guys here in the room, whether it's our audience online, whether it's you going home and telling your story to your friends, your family, your community. We've seen our Champions of Change program spur a lot and inspire a lot of folks around the country to do the great work that some of our champions are doing. So my ask of all of you is that you don't keep it quiet that you were at the Eisenhower Executive Office building today. You're here in the Indian Treaty Room, which is a pretty special place with a lot of history, and we want you to tell this story everywhere you go and share the story of the champions up on stage, the champions that you all know in your communities, so we can inspire others across the country to do great work like our champions did here today. So just one more round of applause for our champions. And our champions are going to stay up on stage and take a picture, but you all are welcome to hang out for a little while, but then we're closing out. So thank you for joining.